One of the examples you gave yesterday in your lecture, an example of a company that over time they shifted their, and maybe they kind of started with it, but over time they kind of solidified their focus on the resulting customer experience. It was Zappos.
Yeah.
And at the end, kind of they would summarize their value proposition as delivering happiness.
Yeah.
Correct? In some sense, and maybe an abbreviated version of what they would say.
No, that's what they say.
They say. So
but it sounds a bit silly, doesn't it?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about. There seems to be, as you focus more on the customer experience, you got a little bit more fluffy language. Yep. You get a little bit more subjective, yep. And I can almost hear the customer saying, "Yeah, right."
Yeah.
So
I think if you started by saying we're a shoe company and we deliver happiness, you wouldn't get very far.
Right, right.
I think they simply came to realize that what they are doing involves some concrete things, like Zappos offers. To go back to earlier in their history in the 2000s up through 2008, 2009, they were just selling shoes, and they were really the first serious player to try to sell shoes online, which is an odd proposition because people want to try shoes on. And how are you going to try shoes on? By doing it online, right. And they also want a broad range of brands that they can choose from, and the brands didn't want to do drop shipping, which is how Zappos started, for a broad range of brands. They'd be out of stock on the most popular brands. So a lot of things about trying to do online shoe selling kind of didn't seem like they were really going to work at first. What they gradually realized over time, they learned to stop drop shipping and start carrying inventory and making all the brands available that you could get at brick and mortar and at real retail. But if they could take all the risk and all the cost involved in being able to try the shoes on, and anything you don't want you can give back, and there's no charge and there's no hassle, then you might start to get at best of both worlds. I think they figured that out fairly early on. And so earlier they were saying, well, it turns out we're really about not just a huge selection of shoes, but great service. And then they realized, really, it's more than great service. We need to do things that have to do with the way our people interact with the customer, because eventually people can imitate all this stuff that we're doing. Free delivery overnight, free returns, great, but that's not that hard to imitate. We need customers to feel something a little extra, and it's kind of an emotional category, shoes. And it has to do with who you are,
fashion, appearance,
a lot of social issues. Absolutely. And so on. So you're kind of dealing with emotion a little bit. Anyway, I've done a lot of work in imaging, and it's much the same thing. You're getting into people's very fundamental emotions there when you're dealing with imaging, because you're capturing their life, who they are, what happened. Well, with shoes, unlike, let's say, buying, books or school supplies online, shoes is a little different because of that emotional element. And I think they figured out pretty clearly somewhere along the line that if we can find a way of going a little bit further with the customer, helping them out, they're going to be anxious sometimes about this decision about what pair of shoes to in fact try. Right. Trying to think through what kind of shoe should I be wearing for this event. If we can occasionally give the customer a little help, a little extra without any charge, that'll cost us more. If we have a call center where we don't pay our people based on how fast they can hang up on the customer, and we don't have them read scripts, and we don't force them to upsell, we instead say, use your judgment, and we try to hire people and make clear that they need to use good judgment, but use your own judgment and figure out how much time to spend with that customer, and do the right thing and make them feel better and try to help them a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean spend all day on the phone with every customer that calls, but it does mean you don't have to try to hang up as fast as you can as soon as you've finished a transaction. It means try to build a little bit of a relationship. They concluded that almost all their customers eventually, at some point in time in their life, will actually call Zappos and talk to somebody, and if they get a little bit of help and they get treated with respect and they get treated well, they're going to remember that forever. And that's worth a fortune in terms of lifetime value. So they put a lot of investment into all that stuff. I think Tony Hsieh at the end feels, and sitting back, he says, often our customers come to us and say, I get a box from Zappos the next morning. I just think of it as a box of happiness. And I used to hear that and go, yeah, okay. Right. It eventually dawned on him that actually they've got a point. This is about happiness. It makes people really feel good to get a little bit of help, to then, with a painless, riskless process, be able to get an emotional category like this. So I don't think this works for everything. I don't think Chevrolet should say, oh yeah, we deliver happiness. That's not going to really work. Neither should, if you're selling lawnmowers, you're probably not delivering happiness. So don't just imitate something like that. Yes. It's trying to get at, which took them a long time, the essence of what at the end of the day really is the impact they have on the customer. And it's not a good shoe selection. It's something that goes a fair bit beyond that.
And you would say that they don't maybe necessarily have to put "we deliver happiness" on their marketing collateral in some sense.
I would say that's probably a good idea not to put that
right.
on.
So let me ask you this: what might they put instead? Like just a example. Like so, the idea we want to create in the mind of the customer, the conclusion, is that we deliver happiness.
Yeah.
But how can they? What can they say, or how can they communicate?
Well, they have a set of 10 core values by which they try to define their culture. And a lot of people talk about culture and talk about how important it is, and usually it's just a bunch of empty words. But sometimes it's real. And you know, Jim Collins' work on Good to Great keeps finding that culture actually in a substantive way is what distinguishes strong cultures, well-defined cultures that are very strongly protected, with people being willing to make trade-offs and sacrifices in order to protect the culture and make the culture stronger, that tends to be associated with a lot of the companies that didn't just do good but became great. And in this particular example, they take some core values that they worked on over a long period of time. One of them starts with deliver wow through service. And they just mean do things with service that surprise and delight the customer and give them a little bit more than normal. But there are a series of other values in there as well. One of them is be humble, which is kind of an interesting one. And you would think, well, what's that really got to do with selling shoes? They decided somewhere along the line that what they wanted and thought was an inherent strength already of their culture was that their people were humble, that had something to do with the way they then interact with customers and make decisions that could impact customers. There's something good about humble. Now you can debate that, but that's a decision they made, and they said that they use their definition of culture, those core values, to make hiring decisions. So when they hire people, they deliberately kind of screen them for how well they fit with the culture. And if they think somebody's very talented, very capable, could really improve the bottom line, but they're not humble, they're kind of egotistical, and this does happen in the world, you get people like that, they don't hire them. So that's a real commitment to making the culture real. And they, on every page of their website, always have one of those core values restated. Another one is have fun and a little bit of weirdness, something like that. So they're kind of goofy. They aren't really exactly directly related back to why I should buy these shoes, but they kind of resonate with the whole feel that you get from the company and from what you get when you interact with them. And so in that way, I think they very indirectly kind of get at that notion by restating those core values over and over again.